Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing the novel Circe by Madeline Miller. This is a Greek mythology retelling that was published in 2018 and follows the Greek goddess and witch Circe from her childhood in the halls of her father, the sun god Helios, to her discovery of sorcery and then her exile on a lonely island, as well as her involvement with Odysseus and many other Greek mythological figures. I went into this novel with a very basic understanding of Greek mythology, pretty much what I learned in school plus Disney's Hercules. That's as far as my knowledge of Greek mythology was before I started the book. Happy to say that I am now aware of some more Greek myths that I wasn't before then. But basically I just wanted to tell you that I didn't go into this book as some sort of expert or even particularly an enthusiast of Greek mythology. The first thing that struck me when I started reading this book was the really beautiful writing style. The author really managed to create a style that felt very classical and ancient and timeless, but at the same time kind of readable and direct. This is a very introverted book. It is told from the first person. It is super slow moving, very slow paced. Even in scenes that are full of action, scenes that involve fighting and monsters and battles and gods, they all have a kind of quietness about them that I find very striking. And for me that worked really well because that's exactly the sort of novel that I love. I like a slow-moving story. I don't really mind if a story stands absolutely still in its time and place and nothing much happens. And there are certainly a few passages in this book that are like that. But for me that worked very well, but I wanted to bring it up because I know that people who enjoy faster-paced plots and faster-paced novels are going to find difficulty with that aspect of the book. The first half of Circe I read very quickly. I think within one day I was halfway through. It drew me right in. And that was partly because there is a trope in this novel that I absolutely love, and that is the woman alone in the wilderness trope. My favourite parts are really when Circe is exiled on her lonely island and she spends the first, years, centuries, who even knows, time is a little bit timey-wimey in the book. She spends the first amount of time on this island all by herself, and I love that idea, I love that trope. It was such a pleasure to read about a woman all by herself in a big house on her own private island that is full of these natural wonders as she lives there and works there and discovers her witchcraft and, transforms animals and has a pet lioness and spends her days weeding the garden. I love that. That was right up my alley. The character of Circe is strangely relatable, considering that she is a centuries-old goddess and I am not. But then, if I was, would I tell you I was? Anyway, what made her so relatable to me was her insecurities that were based on what I think is an incredibly real feeling of not understanding something that everyone else gets, on feeling left out of a shared common knowledge and a shared common culture. I really think this is something that everyone can relate to, at least to some degree. In a lot of books, when we have female main characters that are insecure, a lot of their insecurities might be about their looks or about their success, about their romantic achievements. And I've never quite managed to connect to those main characters on the same level as I connect to the insecurities in Circe. When the gods around her family laugh about a joke or they talk about something that everyone really knows, but she's left out of that. I found that much deeper hitting on a sort of deeply human level, and I think that everyone who's going to be reading this book has been in the situation at least once where you feel like you've been left out of something, and it might not even be an intentional being left out. It might just be that you haven't picked up on something that everyone else knows. And that is a lot of the learning that Circe has to do. It's about overcoming those insecurities and becoming secure in herself and building her own knowledge, and then deciding who to share that knowledge with. So Circe overcomes these feelings of inadequacy, but only after she's being forced out of her family, her halls of gods, and onto her own lonely island where she has no one for company but the occasional visiting god and the aforementioned pet lioness. I have to say that I found the last third of the novel, when we get to the part that is a retelling of the Odyssey, a lot less engaging than the first 2/3. I really enjoyed reading about Circe alone on this island, as I've said, tending to the animals, practicing her witchcraft, and then when Odysseus gets involved, I found that I lost interest in the story a little bit. And it's not because I didn't enjoy him as a character or that I didn't enjoy the plot from his arrival on the island. I think maybe there was just a disconnect between this introspective, inward-looking, quiet prose. Minerva, you okay? Where was I? So from the moment that the island is populated by more people, there is a disconnect between the quiet, introspective, lonely prose and the plot. The prose works really well when there isn't much dialogue to it, when it really is Circe's thoughts and Circe's perception and Circe's descriptions of the life around her. As soon as dialogue becomes a bigger part of the narrative, I found it a little bit grating. It's hard to describe, it's a very minuscule thing, definitely did not overall detract from the book, but it was something I noticed. The ending, however, was absolutely beautiful. That last chapter, so stunningly written, that overall it left me with a real feeling of enjoyment of the book. Like, I totally get the hype about Circe now. I've not read anything quite like this book, especially the prose. It was just so beautiful, and the themes in the book are kind of subtle. You know, I've heard this often described as this great feminist work of fiction. And I suppose what makes this a great feminist work of fiction is not the whole turning men into pigs thing, which does happen and is quite fun. But I guess people find the idea of having a female main character that is just allowed to be her own person kind of groundbreaking. Sad that that's the case. There are a lot of themes in Circe that really spoke to me. This whole idea of exploring your own insecurities, finding your self-worth, gaining control of your own life, and ultimately the idea of being okay with being by yourself and being okay with not moving, with being still, with standing still and being in one place. All very interesting, made me think a lot, and I really enjoyed this book. It did a little bit made me want to move to a remote Mediterranean island, tame a lioness and transform some men into pigs. So finally, I want to say that I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I will recommend it to anyone, except if you know of yourself that you really dislike slow-paced prose. If you really hate slow-paced novels, you're not going to get much out of this. Otherwise, give it a shot. Never mind how much you know or don't know about Greek mythology. I found myself Googling a lot of the names and myths in this novel after I finished it, but it really wasn't necessary for my understanding of the story. I'm definitely going to explore more of Madeline Miller's writing. I know that a lot of people really liked her book Song of Achilles, and if it's anything like this, then I think I will enjoy that one just as much. So let me know your thoughts of Circe if you have read it, which I presume you have, because everyone in the world seems to have read this book before I did. Thank you for watching. Bye!